Start here this half hour. Today is World Electric Vehicle Day. With the massive jump in oil prices over recent months and the steep increases in fuel prices here in South Africa over the last year, many people are opting for either hybrid or fully electric cars. But the pricing and practicality of owning an electric car is still a bit concerning. My colleague Gareth Edwards is spending the morning in a full electric vehicle to better understand if they really are the future of motoring in South Africa. Gareth, you've wrapped up your quick charge. How much power did you get?
I cannot help but think this is the future of motoring. We know it is, Mfundo, over in Europe and certainly parts of the United States as well. I think it's going to be the future in South Africa in a couple of years' time, but I'll be honest, I don't think we are there yet. So quick charge, you're quite right. I used in the Volvo XC40, the one I've had for a few days, to find a charging station. So it's all preset with charging station locations. Thank heavens, because I had no idea what I was looking for. But luckily it took me there, and I was able, in a quick charge at a commercial charging station, I was down to 31%. I was there for about half an hour, and I'm now up to 47%. And this is what's quite weird. You've got to keep looking at the battery charger, or at the battery charge. I'm sure if you've had it for a long time, you'll get a better sense. Like driving a normal car, you'll understand your range. But I wasn't sure what I was going to get. It gave me about an extra 13%, which is really, really good. But thank heavens, I have someone who actually knows a lot more about. Half an hour is not bad. You're right. Half an hour gave me, where am I now? Let me just turn so I can see my dashboard. I was at 32% when we last spoke. I'm now at 47%. So in about half an hour, I managed to get about 13%. But I do want to say this, that was a commercial vehicle charger, which we're going to talk about at 8 o'clock. I'm going to be back at the charging station. So that company is running fleet vehicles, trucks, 1-tonners, 3-ton trucks. So I was getting a lot more juice, Mfondo, than I would, for example, at home. But I want to bring into this someone who many motoring enthusiasts around the country will know. Well-known motoring journalist Chiro Desena joining us from cars.co.za this morning. He's joining us via Zoom. Chiro, good morning to you. I appreciate your time, and thanks so much for taking time to speak to us. The reason I wanted to chat to you is I actually saw your review on Cars a couple of weeks ago on this very vehicle. So I hope you can hear me, Chiro. Give us your thoughts of what you made of this car.
Yeah, I've been really fortunate in my position to drive a number of electric vehicles now. And the Volvo XC40 came along, and it impressed me. It's in a way, it is the Volvo-iest Volvo I've ever driven, because Volvos are smooth, quiet, comfortable vehicles, and just with the addition of an EV powertrain, they're now smoother and quieter and more comfortable. It's I found the driving experience to be particularly enjoyable. As with all electric cars, and as with all traditional powered cars, the way you drive it does affect the range and the consumption. But I found the consumption to be reasonable, about what you would expect from the competition as well, which is great. So, and maybe that is something that's worth chatting about this morning, is how to measure consumption in an electric vehicle, and how much that actually might cost you when you try and compare that to a traditionally powered vehicle. But as a product, I really like the Volvo. It's a sort of car I would happily drive every day. You know, sort of to and from work, it would be fantastic.
Yeah. No, it really would. And also at this price point as well, it's got to be one of the cheaper EV vehicles around as well. And we need to talk about the cost of this. And you're right. Let's talk a little bit about the cost around charging this, because the whole point of me having this car was to see how much I could get out of a full charge versus running a full tank in my ordinary car as well. Do you think that we're going to be able to adopt this, Chiro, as South Africans? Are we going to get our mindset around knowing our electricity issues with load shedding, blackouts, etc.? Are we going to be able to adopt this, do you think? Are we going to move into these EV vehicles as a country?
So I'm actually, again, really fortunate in the space, in that about 2 months ago, we were contacted by Audi South Africa, and they said, would you like to do a long-term test? Would you like to see what it's like to live with an electric vehicle? And they have let us drive the Audi e-tron GT for 2 months, and I've been driving it most of that time. So I've actually been doing this experiment myself. And the number one concern, or not number one concern. The number one perhaps piece of advice I have for South Africans is if you're going to adopt electric mobility, in my opinion, you have to be able to charge the vehicle at home overnight. So in my circumstance, I live in an apartment. I don't have secure parking. I've got nowhere to install a home charger. And this means that I'm out there looking for chargers. Now, there are an increasing number of chargers out there available. At the Kazakoza head office, we have an EV charging point, so that's super convenient in Johannesburg. But in our Cape Town office, we don't have one as we're about to move. So, but the number one, again, like I say, the sort of a number one rule, I would say, if that's the correct way to say it, is that you want to be able to get home, plug your car in, and forget about it. You almost have to treat it like a cell phone. And if you do that, then I think it probably becomes one of the most convenient forms of motoring that out there, and also one of the cheapest, if not the cheapest way of getting around on four wheels.
And I do need to say this as well, Charo, as I start saying goodbye to you, you've got to not do what Gareth does because of load shedding. And I thought it would be interesting what you do with a car like this during load shedding. Here's the mistake I made. Rookie mistake, probably you wouldn't do it, but I certainly did. Because we know when there's blackouts, we've been told we must turn our plugs and DB boards off. So when the power comes back on, we don't get a surge. We don't damage our home appliances. Here's what I did. So yesterday, got home, plugged the car in, we had load shedding. So obviously I turned everything off on the DB board, including the plugs. And guess what happens when I wake up this morning? I forgot to switch the plugs back on to get the car charged, which is why I was sitting at 30%. It does change the way you've got to think about your vehicle, because normally you just get home, turn the ignition off, and go inside. Now you have to think a bit differently, don't you?
And also, you know, that also raises a point. You're probably using the contingency charger and plugging straight into the wall. Ideally, as an EV owner, you want to spend about 11 or 12,000 rand on a home wall box, which then gets wired straight into your DB board, and that will not only give you about 3 times the power output of a normal plug, but it will also mean that the wall box will handle the load shedding and the power cuts, and you won't have to worry about it.
Jara, I'm going to say thanks so much for joining us, man. I really appreciate your time as well. Charo Desena having done a great review of this XC40, much better than I could certainly do it, on cars.co.za. It's actually where I was getting some info about the car. My thanks to him for joining us this morning. So, Mfundo, as I come back to you, I did a quick charge a little bit earlier, and exactly as Charo is saying, it's got to do finding those commercial charging stations. I'm going to go back to where I was. I've got the GPS on. It's going to tell me to go back there. And I'm actually going to speak to the company that is running that charging station, get a bit more of the numbers around charging a car like this as well. So that's coming up for you at 8 o'clock. My thanks to Charo Desena for joining us from cars.co.za. Fascinating talk.
Fascinating indeed. Thank you very much, Gareth. We'll catch up with you yet again a bit later on.